We'll start the recording so we can publish that as well. So welcome everyone to the next iteration of the Refinement meeting. So far in the agenda, we have 3 items. So let's start with yours, Florian. Do you want to give a roundup of the ticket?
Sure. Yeah, so this is about the metrics operator, which we're currently working on. So for everyone who is not completely up to date with that, we have several metrics related custom resources that are right now still being managed in the lifecycle operator in our latest release 0.6. But for the next release, we want to decouple that and put all the metrics related functionality, including the metrics reconciler and the metrics adapter, into its own operator. Therefore, we also had to move over the Keptn metrics CRD into this new operator. So this has already been done. And for that sake, we also increased the API version from V1 Alpha 1 to V1 Alpha 2 in order to avoid conflicts when during the upgrade, when the old operator is still trying to operate on the metrics that lived previously in the lifecycle operator, and the new metrics operator is already running. So that's why we increased this API version. But since the structure is completely the same, I thought it might also be a good idea and relatively low effort to implement a conversion webhook to not lose the specification of any existing Keptn metrics that have been there before upgrading from 0.6 to 0.7. So that's basically why I created this issue. So the logic for the webhooks should be, I think the screen sharing just stopped.
Yes, it's not working anymore, sorry.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's there again. Yeah, so the logic of the webhook will be relatively simple, but as I'm looking at this issue, I'm also realizing that we also need to wire up everything for enabling webhooks in this new operator, because with our own certificate manager, we would also need to have this new metrics operator observed by the certificate operator, and then also, I think, make use of the component that reads the certificate data within the metrics operator. So that might bump the complexity a little bit.
So any question from the rest of the people? Is clear what we need to implement?
I have one more question. Is Alpha 1 also getting moved, or just Alpha 2, like Alpha 1 staying in the old operator and Alpha 2 being in the new operator? Or?
Alpha 1 also had to be moved because the custom resource definition will then live also in the metrics operator. And if that one, so the custom resource definition manifest only contains the new V1 Alpha 2 version, then applying it will not work if there already is the V1 Alpha 1 version applied, because I tried that out exactly, and then it was complaining that V1 Alpha 1 was not in the list of supported versions for this CRD, and then it ran into some conflicts.
So that would mean that I'm just questioning if we can even do the conversion webhook the normal way. If we basically have a new API group for that.
It's new, not a new API group. We have metrics that Keptn
It's the
has
same API
stated.
group? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Okay.
metrics, it's the same. Yeah, the one where we
Mhm.
changed that and where we need to apply custom upgrade script was the metrics provider, which was previously the
Cool.
evaluation provider.
Then should be fine, yeah. Cool, thanks.
Okay, so I asked the maintainer to please join the estimation poker link here so we can have a look.
Can you put the link into the chat, please?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
So what t-shirt sizes do the numbers correspond to?
Question. Let's go from 0.5, it's an XS. 1 is S, 2 is medium, 3 is large, 5 is X large.
Okay.
Question mark and confi are still valid. So let's consider the first row only.
And what does this do these sizes mean?
So okay, I go from one to the other project. Sizes are kind of defining how complex is a task, which you can correlate more or less with how much time you would spend on implementing that ticket. I know complexity and time are not the same, but you can think like that in the current status. You can also look at the previous issues in the board with an estimation. TINI stands for excess. To understand more or less previous ticket, how much complexity were assigned to them. So you can then take better estimation next time. So Thomas and Meg, are you able to estimate? Otherwise, you can always put question mark if you don't know. Meg? Okie dokie. And I think we have a clear winner. And I need to do this over this order. And it's a medium. Perfect. Thank you, Flo. Then the next one from Andre, Keptn evaluation definition. Can we give up a roundup of the ticket, please?
Sure. Yeah, so as Flo already mentioned, we created a new metric operator that we actually took some of the logic from the KLT operator and move it to the separate operator together with the Keptn metric and Keptn metric provider CRDs. Basically, all these changes have made the usage of the Keptn evaluation definition a little bit obsolete. Maybe not the usage of Keptn evaluation definition, but the format which it currently has. So basically, the goal of this ticket is to adapt the Keptn evaluation definition to reflect those changes and to make the usage of the CRDs and also the evaluations in general a little more user-friendly and more flexible. Yeah, so let's go to the technical details. There we can see the current state of the Keptn evaluation definition, which contains some of the some parameters that are not used anymore. For example, the source, as from now on, or when all the epic PR will be merged, we are gonna support only one single kind of provider or one single way to fetch observation data from the evaluation provider, which will be via the Keptn metric resource. So basically in the spec, the source pointing in this case to Prometheus is obsolete because this information will be part of or is part of the Keptn metric, and also together with the query, which is as well part of the Keptn metric resource. I added a proposed solution, what are the changes basically? Removing the source, as already mentioned, and removing the query from the resource. That will, of course, require a bump of the rare version of the Keptn evaluation definition from v1 alpha 2 to v1 alpha 3. And instead of pointing the objectives to a name and the query, it will point to a Keptn metric, which will be defined by its name and by the namespace where it actually is applied and where it exists. Why also namespace? It's because that we want to provide a way for the users that they can actually create one Keptn metric provider and one Keptn metric and use it from multiple projects.
Sorry, and what if you don't specify a namespace?
Probably we can introduce a fallback to default.
So to the namespace where the evaluation resides, right?
Yeah, this implementation details are not yet clear, but yeah, this is one of the options. It's basically up to us to discuss these details here. To be honest, I didn't think about it that much. Yeah, what will be, as I already said, what's not needed anymore. Also a paragraph what we are missing. So we're missing the name and the namespace of the Keptn metric to have a direct pointer to a Keptn metric. And also there are some required adaptations in the evaluation controller, where in the current state we are using interface to kind of decide what provider are we using, but in this case it will be always a Keptn metric resource where we fetch data from. We do not need this interface, so the whole logic of evaluating query and fetching data will be much simpler than it currently is, as this logic was moved or will be moved, or basically was moved to the metrics operator. Yeah, that's basically it. Questions, data, yeah. Thomas, you had a good point about the namespace. Yeah, we can basically, I agree with you that if the namespace is not specified, we should fall back to the namespace where the evaluation definition is defined.
Should we have a 3-stage or a 2-step default in the evaluation namespace if it's not there in the KLT system namespace?
Also possible. It's up on us.
So I
Yeah,
think all of the three things are okay. So if you specify a namespace, then you assume that there is something. If not, then fall back to the default namespace. And if this also doesn't work, then to the
Then just error.
lifecycle toolkit namespace, and then wait until something happens.
I'm writing that
With
down.
the default namespace in that case being the same as the evaluation definition,
Yes.
right? Okay.
So the one which is the nearest to the object itself.
So we should add a note there that the namespace will be just an optional parameter.
Yes. But I like the approach of Andre that one is able to specify the namespace. So the objects could even be in a completely different namespace. And this would also work. So
Yep.
cool idea.
One thing we need to consider that the provider, the Keptn metrics provider and Keptn metric needs to be in single namespace, or we can also add a namespace to the Keptn metric, but that's a different issue.
But Flo, I think we also discussed this yesterday, right? Regarding metrics and their providers.
Maybe, I do not remember, to be honest.
I'm not quite sure, but I think we at least scratched this topic.
Yeah, in this particular case, and with the current implementation, Keptn metric and Keptn metric provider needs to be in the same namespace, because the Keptn metric is directly fetching the provider with its namespace, so it kind of requires to be in the same. But I don't think that's that big of a problem, because in most cases when an administrator defines a Keptn metric and a Keptn metric provider, he creates those resources in one namespace, and then the users which are deploying their application just point to the namespace of the Keptn metric. And
but just out of curiosity, could we create the logic for the fallback mechanism in a way that we can share it across the for the resources?
I would say yes.
Because if
No.
we have it once, then why not use it twice?
This will become a shared code between the three operators, right? Because we use in the evaluation and in the metric, and this is bad.
Yes, otherwise we duplicate the code and could use it for other resources too. So in the respective controller.
I don't think there will be such a big logic here.
I think I've opened an enhancement proposal for 3 or 4 resources which need the same logic. Because
If
it's the
most
same
of
for tasks and task definitions.
if most of them are in the lifecycle operator, then we can have it there and copy it only once in the metric.
I think what I can remember that it was for the lifecycle, for the Keptn task definitions and for the metrics. I'm not sure which the other ones were, but I know that we need some kind of fallback mechanism in other cases too.
I would say let's implement this, and then when we reuse that, let's think about how we can make the best reusable part of code. But I want to highlight one point to make sure that everyone understands that the same way. If we specify namespace, potato kubectl, and then this metric does not exist in this namespace, we should fail and not use the fallback.
No.
You think
because
you should
it
also
can
go
be that the metric will come over after the evaluation is defined, or after the first evaluation runs.
But we have a retry logic there.
Yeah, 10
if
times.
we have a retry logic, then we should be able to specify how often we should retry or how long.
We are.
And then we could fail.
We are. The default value is every 5 seconds, and we have 10 retries. It's more than enough to have all the resources applied.
Okay.
All clear? Any question for this? Then let's put an estimation. Friendly reminder, 0.5 XS, 5 XL. Everything between is 1 t-shirt size. Anna and Meg. Perfect. Quite a bit. Ooh, between 1 and 5. Nice. So let's start from 5. Moritz.
It's already down there in the definition of done. documentation updated, examples updated, any kind of tests that we need. I feel like the implementation part is pretty short, but all this stuff around it is quite a lot actually.
The example update and adaptation of the examples are part of the POC linked. So to be honest, it's not that big of a deal. Maybe the documentation will be a little bit.
And testing, I guess.
Yeah, testing, of course.
I'm curious now from the one. Why one, Anna?
I just read adaptation everywhere. This is for specific things. We already have a proof of concepts, so I didn't see much complexity. But yeah, sure, it's also fine for me. I wouldn't say it's that big though.
So initially, I also thought that that it might be an S, because it's only about adaptation, and it's only about querying a custom resource, and we are doing this all of the time.
Every time someone says only, we need to put €1 in a virtual casa, and when we meet at KubeCon, we drink.
That's with just.
One only, just yeah.
We forgot about maybe one thing. This is a new API version introduction, which is always a little bit more work than usual. Maybe we can also consider conversion webhooks here, but it's not. It's up to us to decide.
You
So
cannot have a conversion webhook here.
Yeah.
you cannot, but yeah, at least you need to still introduce a new V1 Alpha 3 API version and do all this stuff.
But this is a generation comment, no?
Yeah, but still,
Okay.
it bumps the PR, like Giovanni wants
So-
big PRs.
So I will say maybe Moritz, do you have very strong opinion for a 3? Oh, sorry, for a 5, or would you be fine with a 3 since
Oh, it's fine.
there is not much work beside tedious work, so middle ground sounds medium.
No, that would be large.
Small, medium, large, you're right.
Yeah.
I cannot count from left to right. Sorry, it's here. And large. Nice octopus. Okie dokie. So next one is from Meg about some documentation. Meg, could you please give us a roundup of the ticket?
Okay, this is an attempt. We need to stick a stake in the ground of what the documentation set sections are going to look like, and then we can proceed to populate them. We've still got tools questions about what can be auto-generated, etc. And I'm saying that markdown files are very easy to move around, but we need to get working on content. And I think this current structure is probably not quite there where we want to be. So, some very we want to avoid duplicating text in the old Keptn. At one point, I don't know, I think I counted 25 different versions of how to install Keptn. Every procedure there, you started by installing Keptn and the CLI, et cetera, and they were all a mess. So, my stake in the ground, we have a quick tour where we have a killer coda exercise. We're looking for somebody who wants to do that. But that's out there. And then a product overview that begins, it's high level but technical description of what it is, where it's appropriate, and then more detailed descriptions of the functional characteristics, sort of at the level of what's in the concepts articles for Keptn v1. And then now I envision a separate section that's functional architecture overview that will go into greater detail for what really goes on underneath the hood. Information for sophisticated users who just want to know more because they want to know more. Also details that will be useful for debugging, finding problems if they know, or coming up if they've got weird implementation needs to see exactly how things are working. I think we want a separate section for installation that will be comprehensive for installing and upgrading. And we'll put the emphasis on installing a production environment, but we'll give clear information for what you do if you just want a local environment for study and demo. We'll have a summary list of steps on the landing page for this section with links to what goes into it. Another one that operations, administration, management, I don't know what we call it, I don't care. But something like that, just how you run this and how do you, I think we've got one piece in place already, what to happen if your project stops and needs to be restarted, or an application deployment, I'm sorry, needs to be restarted. But there probably will be more pieces like that. User guide, which I hate the title, but people do it, but this is basically how to define and manage a project. May well be that we'll have two sections, one that's the basic steps that you do for just any project, and then another one that's more use cases and specific functionality, and if you want to run pre-deployment tests, and if you want to run a post-deployment evaluation or whatever. And then reference pages. The one section that I think we need, and Moritz and I have a side discussion going on, is for, I'm envisioning a reference page for each CRD. I think there's probably more reference pages that we need, and I don't know what they are yet, and we'll find out in time. Moritz has started some auto generation for the CRDs, but what he's doing would be appropriate for a developer guide, probably not for end users. What I'm looking for is much more the name. What characters can I use in it? Can it have spaces? Can it be upper and lower case? All of these sorts of things that users need to know to implement this. Here in there's one, I'm increasingly convinced that we need either a developer, I think I'd call it a developer guide to avoid confusion with the contributing.md file. Right now, I think we're already in the process of putting way too much information in those contributing.md files. I think if those get too big, they're hard to use. And we need, and there is probably information that people need. So this is what I envision. Now, where do you guys think I've got things wrong?
So I think right now this user guide is what we have under the task. Oh, it's called the task thingy.
Yeah, that's a mess. We have an installation section. The tasks include installation, it includes restarting an application.
Yeah, these are basically this user guide. You have
Right.
something in mind that you want to do with that, and we document you how you can do that.
Yeah, I think it's in the examples. I'm still learning all this stuff. Right now, we don't have a page that says how to do pre-deployment tests or how to do post-deployment evaluation, or how to do performance, all these different use case sorts of things. And we can't do every possible one there is, but to define the ones we're going to do. And there's a relationship to the examples that we've got, and obviously very good. If we've got good working examples, maybe the doc should reference them. They could be a running commentary, or maybe it becomes just a list, and maybe the running commentary is right there with the example and we point to it, but still a place where people can go and see what's there. That would be a curated list, especially because over time we may end up with examples that are for we have one for an older release and one that's for the new release or something like that, so. I think we need something that's kind of use case specific things to do, or specific functionality or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm.
I like this more use case just to show more how can you use the tool. Quick tour, I'm not sure about this. I rather prefer having what we have currently with this getting started.
Yeah, I would also say we need the quick tour. I mean, in this case, the quick tour is actually killer coda, so maybe that's just external and can stay, and we link to it. But I would, instead of the quick tour, actually have a quick start page where we link to killer coda, and then also have, this is how to not how to install, but this is where you find the installation instructions, and this is if you want to do your first task and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, and actually, what I would love to see would be to have whatever we do with killer coda be what we write up in the getting started, or, so that the two are exactly the same. So I can go through that exercise and then I can go back and everything is in the text. And yeah, and I don't care about I'm not crazy about, I actually like the getting started title, but I never liked the quick start, but people use it, so. Yeah, so I don't know, I mean, do we think is a killer coda demo useful?
I'd say yes,
Okay,
but I mean,
yeah,
the question is rather if we find somebody who wants to do it and maintain it.
we thought, Adam thought he had somebody and then they didn't get around to it, so he's pulled the assignment. But, it may actually be a good GSOC project, talking that, or there's a lot to learn to get it done, that it may actually be a summer's worth of work to do it right, so. And I think Adam's willing to mentor for that. So,
Yeah.
okay, let me redefine that. Well, we like the title of, should we make it getting started and then say that that will include a link to a killer coda? And then also just a straight definition of do this and do this and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Then product overview. I have mixed feeling for this.
Other titles are what is Keptn Lifecycle Toolkit, intro to, in fact, right now I've got a draft out there in a PR. I think the current title I've got is intro.
I think this is what we have here under concepts, basically.
No, what we have under concepts is a bunch of things that should be reference pages, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So more towards that, the current status.
Right. Right now, oh, there's a PR. Where is it? What we're talking, I'll see if I can find it. There's a PR out there that's a start on this. Going on. Oh, let's oh, there we go. Whoops. Then we have Adam added a little bit of information. It was the first couple of paragraphs of the getting started, and I stole that. It's 785. Here, 785. And right now we've got a couple paragraphs about what it can do, what it solves, and then links to some other presentations. That's what's left of getting started, because I was splitting it, go down to the intro-kltmd file.
Yeah, you move things out.
Yeah.
Into this
Actually,
one.
You can click in the left frame to get to it after. There we go. Or you're there. No, that's okay. Okay, yeah.
Okay, to me, this sounds a very good plan. A bit too much for a single ticket. Maybe you can split into sub-tickets so we can
Oh, yeah,
spread the work around.
The big ticket is just to come up with
Yeah,
the top level things. Yes, and then populating them. There is already an epic for the architecture section.
oh, perfect.
And there's one for the CRD reference pages. Yeah, so I will link to this. This was just to kind of agree so that we've already had a couple of PRs where we're arguing over, well, should this section be called this? What do we think about, any preferences for operations, administration, or management for a title?
Yeah, this I would keep it
That's-
out.
Yeah, that's the one section where I don't see that we need it right now.
Yeah,
So there's
'cause
really
even
nothing to be maintained here. Like, it's all Kubernetes.
it's all Kubernetes. Backing up and restoring is honestly not the job of our tool at all. And people have other tools for that. So, and even what you mentioned, the restarting apps is rather an actual use case belonging to the user guide.
Okay, so that becomes, yeah, that's what I had that little question that's actually managing your app.
Yeah.
What about our customers should know Kubernetes, but experience tells us that they aren't all experts. You know, that an awfully lot of the issues we've seen on Keptn are actually Kubernetes things. Do we need to just ignore that, or should we have a list of here's how you back up and restore your system? Oh God, that gets complicated.
So
But
I
you
think
know what,
if
we
they
can
don't
always
have
add another.
Kubernetes knowledge, they are not able to use it.
Okay.
And not even from a skills perspective, but also from a domain perspective, because it's only about Kubernetes primitives, everything we are doing, and it doesn't work on Kubernetes.
Okay. So, well, right now, I mean, we can always add a section later if we find we have need for this. So I'm going to remove that from here, and I'll make that note that it's there. What about the developer guide? Can we go ahead and start that? I mean, I'm also thinking we could move stuff back and forth between that. We could, and when a practical concern is we've got all these young new contributors, and a lot of them are doing that. And if we have 4 of them working in the same contributing.md file, they're going to run into merge conflicts, which, eventually you have to learn how to deal with merge conflicts, but I hate to kill them on their first time out.
oh, we can have a new entry. Like here, how to contribute. And then you have different section like set up your environment.
Right.
If they really want that, but I don't know if this should belong to the website actually. Maybe it's better to have it like here in the docs, developer.
That is the website.
Yeah, I know, but it's not exposed.
You mean that I can't, but it's nice, I don't know, it's nice to have stuff that sort of I mean, it seems to me we've got a lot of stuff in README files that is sort of user documentation, but for instance, the README files do not tell me how to navigate the repo. You know, what all is here, and the fact that there's all these micro sections under here, each of which has their own README file, etc.
Mhm.
That's the sort of thing that I think should be in the README files, but that's, I have an opinion on everything. You can ignore me. But
But why not do it in the website right away? The developer docs.
A new section, how to contribute.
Yeah. And then we can link back to readmes anyways if we want to.
True.
Mhm.
And then an actual table of contents for the repo, I would really keep in the repo because that needs to be where the code is and where the actual content is.
Yes. Yes.
And there, so the usual way of doing that is actually a README per folder. And in the README of that folder, you say what the folder is used for
Mhm.
and what it does. And then you have subfolders with new READMEs and stuff like that.
And it
That's
might be
how I
nice to
would
have
do it.
at the top level to have a README that sort of is the big picture.
Yeah, that's the main repo
Yes.
README anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more question if we're done with this.
Okay.
I kind of don't understand the difference between product overview and functional architectural overview. Those kind of go hand in hand for me.
They are, it's the level of detail, I think. That it's, I mean, there are your basic users when you're getting started, you kind of want to know how things work, and then but then there's a level where you want to know in much greater detail what is sort of functional. I'm thinking back to Keptn, like what we just put flow through of really documenting all the ins and outs of what Nats was doing. And that's not something that most people really need to know. And it's ugly and nasty, but some people need to know, and it's also good for us to write down.
So it's basically the same thing, one's overview style and one's deep
Right.
style.
Yeah. The
That sounds
architecture
like
would
an
be very
awful lot
deep
of
dive.
work.
Yeah. All task communities too.
Concepts all the way.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't all get populated immediately, obviously. And it doesn't even now, for instance, just from what I hear, it seems to me that we need something to explain the two operators. It's sort of a functional, let me use it. And that then we might want an architectural details of which operator gets called when and by why and what causes all of that and who feeds what back to what.
That makes sense, huh?
Right. I mean,
So that would
it's
be something if you'll take a look at the Keptn, the old Keptn docs basically.
right.
That would have been under concepts, I guess.
Under
Here.
concepts, we had architecture,
Yes.
which really didn't get maintained. But some of it is very, very shallow. And
Yeah.
then
But maybe instead of architecture, you would have concepts and then the different, like, kind of the operators that we have, maybe at least KLT and then the matrix operator or something. I can envision that there, and then you have the detail thing for the details, basically.
right.
I just wanna not go down that rabbit hole of kind of having to maintain the things twice, once in a more detailed and once in a less detailed version,
Yeah,
because that's gonna get out of hand, I think.
I agree. Yeah, anything that's duplicated is at best a whole lot of extra work. At worst, the two get out of sync.
Yeah, I would expect them
I
to
am
be
propo-
out of sync always, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I say, what I'm envisioning is that we put a stake in the ground. We've got a place when we have something that needs extra detail, we can write it, and then we can go back and look and see, we only had two things that we thought we had to do a deep dive on. Is that worth this whole section? And we can reorganize stuff later. But it sort of need a working structure where we can put stuff. And I'm actually thinking I just did it with the CRD's reference pages that I've got drafted that I can't turn into a PR right now, but I said this is a section because I'm thinking there's a lot of those to be documented, and when we get a couple of them, and basically what it says is it's under development, and anything that is in here has been technically reviewed and is true, but it may not be complete, and not everything's here yet. And that the Jenkins documentation still has tons of sections and like some really important topics that are empty files and say, this is the stub. If you'd like to contribute, we'd love to have your PR. So, But this is a stake in the ground that I expect will change significantly as we get deeper into populating it. The question is whether
Yep.
this is a good place to start.
I think general consensus looks yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Looks good.
So I will revise this epic, and then I will create an epic for each section with the first task of anything that we've got in the existing docs to get it moved into the new structure.
Perfect.
And then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Meg. So then this one we refined. This one we are.
Oh, and by the
Oh.
way, a general message to all of you. I don't know if you've heard this, but I love to write. And if you hate to write, if you're sitting there thinking, how are we going to do those? If you hate to write, like I've taken stuff on dirty cocktail napkins, but scratch down anything. I need the information. I'm happy to write it up for you. The job here is not to turn you into technical writers. Although if any of you wanted to come over to the dark side, I'd love to have you, but but we're trying to get a good doc set. We're not trying to kill you guys. So that's what I'm here. Use me for it.
Sure. If you have cookies, then I would join the dark side, but
Oh, I can come up with cookies easily.
oh,
But
nice.
you guys are great writers, I have to say. So, but I think if you were interested in tech writing as careers, you would be doing it and not what you're doing. So
I like the joke of Moritz in the chat. Very regexp joke.
I
Okay,
had to do
now
it.
let's go on the next ticket. This one
Uh-huh.
from you, Anna.
From very long ago. Yeah, basically we have a security pipeline. Among the alerts of this security pipeline, there is something which is concerning the fact that currently we are not pushing our images with the digest. We do have this in Keptn. We don't apparently have this in KLT, and this triggers our pipeline. So we should fix it.
You mean we don't have images signed, or we don't use the hashes
We
when
don't
we
use the
reference
hashes.
images?
We
Yeah,
don't
we
use
just
the
use the
hashes.
version, yeah.
Mhm.
Because the
So it's
images are signed as far as I know.
Yeah, they are there, just they are not used.
Do we need to estimate, or do everyone agree it's very straightforward to implement?
I don't know how straightforward it really is. With release please taking over the version bumps and stuff. We would need to teach release please to also change the hash to the right one.
But in Keptn we use release please.
And
Yeah, but
do
we
have
don't use hashes.
Then are we ignoring this in Keptn pipeline too?
Yeah.
Okay.
We never used hashes, we only use version tags. We have signed images for the hashes, but we don't use the hashes for referencing the images.
Then does it even make sense to try?
So just to see why it fails. Ah,
You're in the wrong account.
yes. So here it fails saying what?
We see nothing.
No, I know. I'm looking before where, because it's so huge.
There are multiple.
So when we use it in our manifest,
Mhm.
localhost dev, and then that's it. I think we can ignore this.
Then the ticket is trivial. It's just turn off the alert.
Yeah, because we are rendering a manifest that use anyway our local host registry that we built in the pipeline. I just look into this alert job thingy. The URL is localhost 5050 in the image.
Yeah, this is running stuff locally anyway.
Yeah, so let's
We do
agree
the
that
same in our manifest, but we can ignore.
so I will add here something. Remove this from. And with a new Helm chart, you can specify the version with a SHA if you want. So very badly formatted. I will change the ticket later. And these two are there. This we refined. This one, Andre, was refined last week, or it's something that we need to discuss?
We refined this like a few weeks ago, I would say. That's the Keptn app discovery epic.
Okay, perfect. So I will remove all these ready for refinement labels. And with that, if there are no more last minute issues to discuss or topics that you want to raise, I think we can call it a day. Thank you everyone for joining and talk, and see you next time. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.